State and Special Advisor on Youth and Sports to the Government of Plateau State, 2002 to 2004. He is politically active, having previously participated as a candidate in the following elections: the Plateau State House of Assembly primaries in the United Nigerian Congress Party, 1997, gubernatorial primary elections in the People's Democratic Party, PDP, 2006, and the senatorial candidate of the Action Congress of Nigeria, 2012. Okay, Mr. Yusuf Palm is a private legal practitioner and the managing partner in the law firm of J.Y. Palm and Company. He's a corporate lawyer with extensive experience in commercial law and practice and has been in the trenches for a long time in Nigerian politics. A scion of a great family, his father used to be in the Nigerian army, and he was one of those that lost his life in the first coup of January 1966. Before we go further in this discourse, can we just observe a minute's silence in honor of one of the people who lost their lives and shed their blood for this nation called Nigeria, Colonel Palm. May the Lord strengthen the family, especially his children, compensate and console them, and may the soul of the faithful departed continue to rest in perfect peace. My brother Yusuf, well, I forgot to mention, of course, he was my classmate in 1973 January at King's College, Lagos. My brother Yusuf, welcome to our discuss today. And my cousin, Akilulu Kende, tells me that you and him were also classmates, maybe at the law school or something like that. So it's a very interesting. Yeah. And when he was so excited when I told him that you are a speaker, he found out that you are a speaker on this platform. So you are family. So welcome and God bless you. I'm going to be asking you to please share with us, if he can, the map of the Middle Belt that you sent across to us. But before that map comes up, maybe you need to give us a little bit of a background of your understanding of the situation we're in Nigeria, the complexities of Nigeria, any thoughts, any memories that you shared even with your late father in those days, that has brought us even to this stage at this point in time. Yusuf, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Itwa, my brother. I'm honored to be on the platform, and thank you for your invitation to speak on this national issue. Regarding my thoughts, if I may start that way with the state of our dear country, I am an undying optimist. And no matter how bad things seem to be right now in different sectors of our national life, as a child, I witnessed Nigeria almost break apart because of the events that happened in January 15, 1966, and July 29, 1966. It was a terrible time for those who would remember. Many of us were victims of the tragedies that unfolded. And at a point in time, it seemed Nigeria was not going to survive. But here we are today, 60 years or 53 odd years later, are still surviving. And my belief under God is that we will continue to survive, and this nation will witness growth and transformation even to the generation of our children. So without getting into all the details, I believe that there is room to be optimistic about this nation. And even in our lifetime, we will see the changes beginning to happen.
Thank you, Yusuf. But that's very encouraging from you, to be honest, because a lot of our mates, our colleagues, people that I talk to all over the place, they have lost total faith in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, some of them are getting second passports, and some of them are checking out of Nigeria, even at the age that we all are in. Okay. And as for the generations a little bit below us and our children, most of them have said goodbye to Nigeria, and they probably are not thinking of coming back. So what is the basis of your optimism, and why do you think that we're going to be able to sort ourselves out in Nigeria?
Well, 50% of the solution of a problem is probably recognizing what the problem is. And if there's any problem that has received enormous discourse, it is the challenges that Nigeria faces: economic, political, social, in terms of security. And, you know, it's not rocket science. There was a time in Plateau State when and people who live in other parts of the country would not have experienced what we did. But things got so bad in terms of governance, unity and cohesion, and security that a state of emergency was imposed on Plateau State in 2004. I had the privilege of being the Attorney General before the state of emergency and Attorney General during the state of emergency. And I witnessed a transformation that I never believed could have happened. We went from a state of unstable governance to a state of stable governance, where government was run according to the parameters of the Constitution, one, and protocols and rules, policy implementation, and execution were guided by what was in the best interest of the state. So the civil service was running like a well-oiled machine, doing its job. The police received the impetus they needed to carry out their duties. The administrative council was run by technocrats. Budgeting was prioritized to meet the actual needs of the community. And so a combination of these factors of good governance turned the state around within 3 months, brought stability, good governance, and then mechanisms of peace building were introduced, which now diffused tension and restored peace. For me, experiencing and witnessing that transformation gives me a core belief that what Nigeria needs is the kind of leaders who will insist on the right things being done, who will serve the nation as patriots and conduct the affairs of governance in the best interest of the nation rather than their own personal interests. The process by which such leaders will emerge is a different story, but it is possible. And we're heading in that direction from my political experience, because when you hit rock bottom, there's nowhere else to go but up. So I hope this answers a bit of your question.
A little bit of it, but maybe you can throw further light and share with us what exactly happened in Plateau State that there was such a quick transformation and stability in government. Who was the governor at the time, and what was he the governor before, or did he emerge as a new governor, or whatever it was at that time? That's one. And then secondly, the process that Nigeria may need to go through to bring about the kind of leaders that you have described, those who are passionate about Nigeria and so on and so forth. What do you think that process should be? Is there any possibility that we'll be able to engineer that process and get it going? And then fundamentally, what role should people like ourselves, the people on this platform, be willing to play in actualizing that process? What we're hoping to do on this platform is actually turn ourselves into a team, a think tank, a force, a movement that will somehow or the other cause positive change, especially in leadership in Nigeria. And then on the other hand, also inform the populace. A lot of the populace are very, very ignorant at this point in time. And then we will need to also inform them so that they know left from right, right from wrong, and so on and so forth. So just to reiterate, what process do you think Nigeria needs to go through to bring those leaders? What can we, those of us on this platform and the so-called elites or the knowledgeable in Nigeria do individually to make this happen? And then a throwback as to what exactly happened in Plateau State and who was in leadership at that time that brought that kind of stability. Thank you.
Okay, so you've turned my presentation upside down instead of the top, but I'm very happy to do so. I'm very happy to do so because recounting experiences sometimes is better than theory. Now, first of all, the governor before the state of emergency in Plateau State was Chief Joshua Dari, and I was very honored to serve under him. But at the time I was appointed the Attorney General, there was chaos in the state. There had been a crisis, violent conflict, which erupted on the 7th of September 2001. It was a build-up, if you like, of the challenges of the Middle Belt that had virtually commenced from the time of the amalgamation. Plateau State is viewed by most Middle Belters as the eye of the Middle Belt, the spiritual headquarters of the Middle Belt. And so it occupies a very special place in the hearts of all Middle Belters. It is predominantly Christian, but it has a very vocal Hausa Fulani Muslim population in the heart of its city. And remember that Plateau, as is with all the Middle Belt states, are surrounded on the northern border by Hausa Muslim states, and on the southern border by I don't want to use the word predominantly Christian populations of the Yoruba and the Igbos, but I know that there's a mixture.
Why are you rolling?
So here we are in Jos, in the middle of and surrounded by majority ethnic groups in the north, which are predominantly Muslim, with a small but strong Hausa Fulani Muslim population in the heart of Jos that have been there for decades. Now, at the time the crisis erupted, several factors preceded it. I'll just quickly go through them without taking too much time. Now, you remember that in 1986 or thereabouts, President Ibrahim Babangida-led administration had rather surreptitiously caused Nigeria to join the Organization of Islamic States or Islamic countries. This was in the setting where minority tribes in the Middle Belt were very apprehensive of domination of their religion and of their culture by their northern neighbors. And it had been festering before then anyway. But placing Nigeria in the OIC raised a lot of tension. religious tension, particularly between the northern Muslims and the southern Christians, and the middle belt in the middle. So these apprehensions, which had been allayed in the course of constitutional engineering before independence, began to come to the fore. Not long after that, the same administration created Jos North local government out of the old Jos local government, which gave the impression that the Hausa Muslim community in the middle of Jos city was being given a pride of place by having their own local government as opposed to the other local governments in which the largely more indigenous populations existed. The creation of Jos North local government raised tensions to no end. Coupled with that, the political class apparently did not realize playing divide and rule. So they placed themselves, depending on what their interest groups were and their motives and agendas were, on either side of the divide, and heated up the polity even more. As the problem escalated, Sani Yarima Zamfara now declared Sharia in Zamfara state. And immediately put pressure on Sharia in their. Now, Sharia is a system of Islamic law that governs a society upon which it is imposed. Now, when Sani Yarima promulgated the Sharia law in Zamfara, other states began to follow suit. Some of them reluctantly, but because of the pressure that religious sentiments tend to bring, most of them complied. Now, Kaduna State is divided into Kaduna North, which is predominantly Muslim, and Kaduna South, which is predominantly Christian. And when the House of Assembly in Kaduna State began to debate the bill to impose Sharia, it was the ignition that sparked violence in Kaduna. I believe it was in the year 2000 or early 2001. And there was mayhem in Kaduna for several days. Violent, uncontrolled violent conflict. Up till this point in time, there was no untoward conflict in Jos. But as the months wore on, the effect of the tensions in Kaduna and also other neighboring northern states began to affect Jos, even as refugees and victims began to flood into Jos for refuge and shelter. So the tension and the atmosphere escalated and was triggered by some political event in Jos on the 7th of September 2001. From then on, there were a series of conflicts, violent conflicts that were hard to control and ultimately led to the declaration of a state of emergency. Now, the state of emergency imposed on Plateau mandated that the governor, the cabinet, and the House of Assembly be suspended for the period of the emergency, which was 6 months. So for 6 months, there was no executive governor, state executive council, and there was no House of Assembly, no legislature. And that was the form of governance at the time. There was an administrator for Plateau State appointed, who was General Chris Ali, and there was in replacement of the State Executive Council was an administrative council made up of the permanent secretaries of the various ministries in the state. And that was the way in which the state was governed. There was a suspension of political activity as well. So there was an immediate dousing of political tensions and an absence of any more heated political activity. I believe that went a long way in dousing the flames. There was also a significant increase in security, in the security apparatus, which gave a sense of comfort to the public at a time when they had witnessed some of the most horrendous violent acts that you can ever imagine. So the exigencies of politics, therefore, did not necessarily interfere with the process of government. And decisions were taken not based on political considerations anymore, but based on the civil service guidelines, civil service rules, budgetary imperatives, and prioritization of executive action. It seems to me that in the absence of any major political activity, government was able to concentrate on the business of governance. And that perhaps is what led to the transformation at the time from a state which happened to be in a state of chaos to a state and was running, and government was running with few impediments. It's a dilemma because the democratic process necessarily entails the participation of political parties and politicians. Instructively, however, after the state of emergency and the return of political structures and the politicians, the entire turbulent process began again. What that tells me, therefore, is not that there's anything wrong with party politics and democracy. Perhaps the problem is with those who are practicing it, the manner in which they practice it, and the influence that they exert on their followers, and the interests that they pursue, which sometimes may not be in consonance with the national or state interest. Now, so that's as far as process is concerned. In order to resolve the political question, there is no alternative in my mind to participation. So it brings me to answer the question, what can people like, for want of a better term, the elite, so to speak. There are different forms of participation. There are some who can participate actively in politics, and there are others who may not have the luxury of the opportunity to participate actively, but because of the situation in which we find ourselves, there's no longer any room for anybody to sit on the stands and be a spectator in the unfolding events in Nigeria. Even if one cannot participate actively in politics, you can be part of your local community. You can be part of your local government, the activities. You can take an interest in the way the place is run. You can lend your voice, find out those who are relevant and those who are controlling the handles of power, whether in politics or in administration. Consciously make an effort to be part of it. Take an interest, participate even indirectly. And I think it will go a long way in gradually bringing about the change that we require.
Very good, my brother. You asked for the map. We have showing the map of Nigeria, what you've titled Emerging Federations, and so on and so forth. Maybe you want to speak to this map and speak to what really are the issues with the Middle Belt and what is the Middle Belt thinking and what are the strategies, and can we even have a united Nigeria at all? I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, so the title, The Emerging Federations, actually stubbornly refused to go away from my research. I actually didn't coin it. But it's a graphic representation of where the Middle Belt lies in the geographical expression called Nigeria. There was a map below it which showed all the states. I don't know if it's available, but if it's not, the Middle Belt covers the area that is in purple. And it comprises 7 states. The old Plateau, now Plateau and Nasarawa. There you go. Thank you. The old Plateau, the old Gongola, which is now Adamawa and Taraba states, Niger State, Kwara State, Kogi State, Benue State, the Federal Capital Territory, alongside Southern Kaduna, Southern Bauchi, Southern Kebbi, Southern Gombe, and Southern Yobe State. In the course of the amalgamation of the Northern and Southern protectorates in 1914, the truth was that the British were only interested in exploiting the resources of the protectorate, as it were, the 2 protectorates. And so the issue of unity and integration, an objective of the British colonialists. The southern part of Nigeria was governed by direct rule, while the northern part of Nigeria was governed by indirect rule. In other words, whereas the colonial administration governed the southern part of Nigeria directly, the northern part of Nigeria retained its administrative and judicial character. So you still had the emirs who governed their domains. You still had the local courts that dispensed justice. And you had even the local system of police at that time. And the British were happy to keep those systems going in the way they did because it suited their purposes at the time. However, because of the reluctance of the northern region to accept Western education and Western civilization and religion, by the way, because the missionaries came in with Christianity. The missionaries set up schools using their expatriate staffs, teaching English, and thereby created a sense of separateness and educational disparity between the Christianized groups and the Muslim ones. And as time went on, there was a competition for adherence even amongst the people of the Middle Belt. Now, it was important to the northern region political class to retain a form of control over the Middle Belt. Otherwise, their presence in the political equation would have been weakened. So no party was encouraged from the Middle Belt to grow beyond any certain level. And for quite a while, the Middle Belt people continued to remain in a state of subjugation, political subjugation, to their more powerful northern neighbors. However, as time went on, the Middle Belt elements began to unite and formed a political party called the United Middle Belt Congress, which fused with the Action Group in 1957 and formed an opposition to the Northern People's Congress at the time. Since the time of the UMBC, the United Middle Belt Congress, till date, it has always been a pattern that the Middle Belt states tend to align with, whether it is the opposition party or, let's say, the opposite party to the dominant party in the North, to vie for political relevance in the Nigerian space. So, for example, you'd find that from the times of the UMBC to now, when it was party politics in the 70s and 80s, the Middle Belt was part of the National Nigerian People's Party, which was called the Progressives, which contested elections against the MPN. Subsequently, the Middle Belt was aligned with the Social Democratic Party against the National Republican Convention. Thereafter, the Middle Belt aligned with PDP against the Congress CPC. I can't remember what the acronym for CPC stands for, but the CPC and the AMPP. And then finally, to this date, the Middle Belt states tend to be with the PDP in opposition to the APC. This is a pattern that has always happened. And this pattern emerged from a desire and identity for the peoples of the Middle Belt. The fear and apprehension of domination is real. And unfortunately, several things have occurred, or several events have occurred in Nigeria, which has given credence to this fear and apprehension. There is, unfortunately, patent marginalization. Even in the quest for political office, the tendency is the Nigerian political lexicon talks about the North and the South and ignores the fact that there is a distinct set of people in the middle of Nigeria who belong to diverse ethnic groups, who are minorities individually, but could constitute a majority collectively. Now, the Middle Belt itself is comprised of the ethnic groups in the Middle Belt speak about 230 languages. You can imagine the diverse culture, traditions, and aspirations of the people. Now, how has this been met within the context of the Nigerian space? Very little is said about the people of the Middle Belt. And unfortunately, when there's an agitation by the Middle Belt to assert its interests or to assert its identity, these efforts are sometimes viewed with suspicion, sometimes outright disdain, and deliberate efforts are made politically to suppress those exertions. What happens then is that it creates a boiling point or a boiling pot with a lid over it, continuously smoldering, waiting for some kind of spark to ignite. In my opinion, the political neglect of the Middle Belt, its aspirations, its people's aspirations are what it stands for, has become the catalyst that has transformed our fault lines of ethnicity and religion into chasms which need a great deal more effort to fill. It is high time, I believe, that the Nigerian nation, especially the political class, especially the National Assembly, and all those responsible in governance to recognize the fact that unless ethnic minorities in Nigeria are taken into consideration in the political equation, these fault lines will continue to expand and present a major challenge to the unity of Nigeria. The clamor for restructuring, however, provides a potentially useful vehicle to resolve some of these issues. Most of the proponents of restructuring have yet to give specific clarity to those areas that require nation state requires to restructure. But I think from the perspective of the Middle Belt, there are several areas that will be of importance in terms of what the Middle Belt will want. A restructuring that will usher in equity, fairness, meritocracy, good governance, citizen mobilization, and participation with lasting democratic values are absolutely necessary. Otherwise, it will only lead to frustration for restructuring. Is one of the richest regions in Nigeria, with arable land, with abundant mineral resources. We have tin, columbite, tantalite, zinc, lead, kaolin, barite, bauxite, you name it. But the region is hamstrung, like most other regions, by the constitutional provision that brings these resources completely under federal control. In view of the dire economic situation in Nigeria now, it is high time that states, regions that have access to natural resources are allowed to exploit those natural resources in order to improve their economic well-being. Even if a restructuring does not allocate the resources directly to each state, perhaps it can come under the concurrent list where it is shared both by the federal and the state governments. If that is done, it will relieve the federal government from the burden of receiving states cap in hand every month to collect revenue allocation as though they are beggars. More importantly, it will generate wealth within their communities. It will improve the standards of living. It will create employment, and it will gradually give access to the populace economic resources that will restore not only the Middle Belt, but also create a class of business entrepreneurs who themselves will be catalysts for business and for the growth of the economy. It will also free resources to plow into agriculture and further industrialization. So in a nutshell, as far as access to natural economic resources are concerned, it seems to me absolutely necessary that this provision in the Constitution be reviewed to enable states, not only in the Middle Belt, but throughout the nation, access to their own resources and control, to some extent, at least 50% of their own resources. It will reduce tension, it will alleviate poverty, and it will cause security to improve by natural organic means. What about state policing? the conflicts that we have seen in the Middle Belt somehow did not alarm the rest of the country. Because at one point in time, it seemed as if it was only the problem of those in the Middle Belt and perhaps in some parts of the North. But those conflicts were precursors to a structurally fundamental problem of law enforcement and security. And a situation where the entire security apparatus is centralized with the federal government has proved to be totally ineffective and has actually created greater problems than we had anticipated. The total population of the Nigerian police force is barely 300,000. In a country of 150, 180 million, it's impossible for them to police. In any event, half of them are busy guarding so-called VIPs. They follow them around with their guns, with contingents, with all kinds of security paraphernalia, and therefore leave probably half of the workforce to police the rest of the country. That's impossible. The only way out of the dilemma is also to quickly review the Constitution and brainstorm on how to introduce state and/or community policing to relieve the pressures that have now come to bear on the police. Of course, it has its attendant benefits. In addition to security, there'll be a large workforce of young people, active young people, engaged in meaningful activity. This will go. This will take research, analysis, and planning. But the sooner we start, the better. Most of the problems of Nigeria fester because they are never given attention at the time that they should. We lack think tanks. We lack respect for intellectual prowess. And the politicians, unfortunately, tend to ignore the advice of those they perhaps consider to be akada, people who speak too much English. So they want to be on the field, they want to run things, they forget that developed countries depend on planning, policy formulation, intellectual rigor, research, and policy execution in order to reach the developed stage that they have reached now. We must go back to those exigencies. So that's state policing. The system of local government is not working. The governors are not even bothering to allow democratic local government elections. It has now become the norm rather than the exception for governors in most states to appoint local government administrators loyal to them rather than allow the people to elect local government officials for themselves. What this does is it cripples the local government councils. Unfortunately, this system that has been evolved becomes an avenue for corruption. When revenue is allocated to the local governments, most of the state governors appropriate those local government revenues and are unchallenged and are not accountable for them, primarily because the local government chairman is somebody that was appointed by the governor rather than elected by the people. So he is there to do his bidding. And this has implications on the economic welfare of the local government, the standard of living of the people, the security of the people, and so many other issues that would otherwise have been dealt with by an independent system running in accordance with what the Constitution provides. The local government system is very important. Most of the time, we find ourselves blaming the president. But we must remember that yes, there are challenges at the federal level, but there are 36 states. And each component state is run by a governor and his administration. And if they were to run their states well, then most of the problems that are ascribed to the federal government will not be so ascribed, but rather it will be clear where the responsibilities are. Again, if the governor is the chief security officer of the state, then let it be so in reality and not just in ceremony. As it is, no governor can command a commissioner of police, talk less of a brigade commander or director of the SSS in the state. Everything is under federal government control. And before a governor can receive approval or authorization for certain actions, those heads of the various security apparati must get those authorizations from their superiors at the center. We've seen a situation in Jos where attacks are being carried out in communities, and soldiers or police will not be deployed there until they receive authorization from the IG or from the chief of staff. So the constitution needs to be reviewed to tweak some of these areas. And I think that perhaps I've touched upon several of the areas that need attention. And I'm not sure how much time I have to speak, but maybe I'll just stop here and see if there are any questions that you want to ask.
Thank you very much, Yusuf. And I'm going to be asking people on the platform to begin to put their questions together. And there are a few questions that have been popping up here and there. As a matter of fact, I think your brother Ibrahim asked a question or made a comment, and
Okay.
some lady was cheering you on and saying, go on, use, go on, use. I think a lady...
Fortunately, I can't see any of the comments.
It's all right. So Ibrahim says, brilliant presentation. Of course, he's rooting for you. Maybe he wants you to run for governor so that at least you have his vote. So we're gonna work that out. Okay, but let's go back to your map, the imagine states. And I don't know what the Kwarans and the Kogi people are going to say. You put them bang in the middle belt, while them say Yoruba people, and they want to go back with their Yoruba people. I don't know what the people of Niger State are going to say also. But I think at least we have a fundamental basis of looking at how to, first of all, restructure Nigeria, and then secondly, change our constitution. And I think what you said fundamentally really is that if we don't change this constitution, especially as regards to the management of our economic resources, state police, your brother Rochas Okorocha did something in his state. They arrested him. The governor told him. But what you said just now happened in that the IG called and told them to release him. So the governor became like a toothless bulldog. But nonetheless, I think Rochas learned the lesson thereof. So we have these issues in Nigeria. First of all, Yusuf, why our leaders, why are they not accepting that we need to restructure and we need to reallocate our resources? Like you said, at least 50% should go to the state so that the state can develop the state. Why did they refuse to do that? And also, why do they refuse? Why are they so afraid of this state policing thing and all the other things that need to be done to give us a really federated platform? Benjamin, please mute your mic. Benjamin, normally. Go ahead, Yusuf.
So this question goes back to the methodology of selection of leaders in the national polity. And I have the greatest respect for all our leaders. I have the greatest respect for them. And we have some really astute and brilliant leaders in Nigeria. But it goes beyond individual leaders. It goes to the issue of the leadership. My experience in the political field is that the political parties, especially in the component constituencies, have evolved this cynical approach to selection. And it seems to be, for now, uncontrolled. I will not say uncontrollable, I will say uncontrolled. To the extent that when leaders are being selected at the ward, local government, and state levels, the parameters for that selection are dysfunctional. There are certain values which are essential to the selection of leaders. Character, integrity, merit, competence. Those must be the key factors that should guide the selection of leaders anywhere in the world. And in many parts of the world where there's development, that is exactly what happens. If you cast your mind back to the Singaporean experience, I remember the way in which one of Lee Kuan Yew's associates described it was that they built Singapore on three main pillars: merit, honesty, and pragmatism. Now, even if those were the only three things that we set ahead of us to guide the selection of leaders, generally besides at any point, then we would have emerging leaders whose disposition would be more towards achieving results, complying with the rule of law, interrogating the national interest, examining those aspects of national policy that are working and those that are not working, and taking a committed interest in working together and with those who can develop ideas to make things better. That ought to be the system that runs. But we need to be very honest with ourselves, especially in conversations like this, that the level of corruption and impunity in Nigeria is alarming. And where you have those kinds of aberrations, what happens is that the national interest is put to the back seat. It's hardly an item for consideration. And so for how many years has this clamor for restructuring been going on? Decades. So it's impossible to believe, therefore, that it's an issue of either ignorance or lack of understanding. Because, hey, there have been constituent assemblies, and the most recent national conference was held, I believe, in 2012, 2014. No, it was 2012. And the report of the national conference is still there. How much of it has been studied? How much of it has there been an attempt to implement? But that was the opinion of a cross section of
But I'm just saying that
in different aspects of our national life and constitution.
so
And they made recommendations, which at the very least deserve some form of serious consideration. I don't recall seeing a publication of the report of that national conference. After all, as Nigerians, are we not entitled to know? Mr. Steve Orosonye was the head of a committee that reviewed the civil service and the entire structure and proposed reforms of the civil service. What has been done with that report? Gathering dust on some shelf in an office. Honorable Justice Uwais headed a committee on electoral reforms. What happened to his report? So the truth is that we are not, we have an abundance of material, ready material, that can form the basis of critical examination and intellectual research, analysis, and recommendations. But they are not being used, primarily because we have a leadership that is not necessarily interested in intellectualizing our problems and fashioning out solutions, but it's easier to continue to run the machinery of government as it has always been because it's more convenient and it is less turbulent. It takes political will and courage to implement some of these reforms that have been recommended over the years. So the bottom line is that we must be able to evolve a leadership going forward that not only abides by the national interest, but has the courage, the political will, and the patriotism to bring some of these recommendations to reality. And then I believe that the nation will begin to change and transform in the direction that we all hope it will.
Let me tackle you a little bit, going back to the middle belt, okay? Your brother, it must be your brother, I believe, Ishaya says that you've spoken well, but we need to bear in mind that the middle belt is not homogeneous. You yourself said that there's so many tribes in the middle belt. Number two, somebody else did say that, I think it's Ene Tamuno, he was with us in King's College. He says that he's not sure state police is a panacea for our current security challenges. It will only succeed in democratizing inefficiencies to the grassroots. It says we need to change our value system. Okay, so my question is this: how come the middle belt has not been able to totally and completely unite together? And then what is their strategy? What is their thinking? And what role can they play into forcing this Nigerian, this thing together? A gentleman, Kim Thomas, said that whenever I tell people in Lagos that I'm from Plateau State, the first thing they ask is, are you Hausa? Now, this is a relevant question. Some people are not even aware that there is a strong middle belt. Anybody above Kwara and all those states, they're all Hausa, Hausa, Fulani, and all that and all that. How come the middle belt over these years has not really been able to evolve the leadership, J.S. Taka and all those sort of people at that time, maybe your good self, maybe this and that, evolve the leadership that can actually lift them up? I'm sure General T.Y. Danjuma is from the Middle Belt, Taraba State, thereabouts. Yeah. How come we have not been able to evolve this leadership that has lifted Nigeria forward? How come during the Civil War, if I may take us back there, it seemed as if the Middle Belt almost coerced with Hausa Fulani, joined forces with Yoruba, and then face the Igbos. Our head of state then was a middle belter, General Yakubu Gowon. And even till today, if you ask the average man on the streets, Yakubu Gowon, they probably say to you, I'm sure he's a Hausa man or a Fulani man or something like that. What really is the issue? Why have we not had a strong middle belt, united and agitating for a place in the sun in this country?
Okay, so it is understandable. Those in the north, in the southwest, And in the southeast, the tendency is to lump the north together into one region. After all, Nigeria was an amalgamation of the northern and southern protectorates. So that impression has always been, and it's been promoted actually deliberately.
Have we lost him? Did he freeze? Looks as if our guest has frozen. Maybe it's the well, let me keep quiet. Let me not expose myself. Maybe a technology, no doubt, but I call him Olu to log out and log in again so that we can go on with this. But we do seriously have a serious issue here in Nigeria, in that we keep looking at Nigeria as north, almost like north versus the rest, or there's west and there's east, and there's not much in between. Although even the Midwestern states of Edo and Bendel seem to be exerting themselves a bit more. But our Middle Belt brothers always tend to push themselves backwards into some kind of a minority. My thinking when our guest comes on back is to say, how do we clearly identify a very strong middle belt? Who is a middle belter? Like I said, I don't know if Kwara and Kogi will agree with them. I don't know if some parts of Niger State will agree. Maybe Lower Kaduna will. And then how do we coalesce this middle belt into a very, very strong force, very, very strong force that can also ensure that every aspect of Nigeria sits around a table. Maybe we need to define and identify and brand and rebrand the middle belt and put them firmly on the table of Nigeria. Whoever is core north or whatever you want to call it, let them rebrand themselves. We put them on the table. The West, brand themselves, put them on the table. The Midwest, brand themselves, put them on the table. And the East should decide who they are. Are they Easterners of Igbo, or are they divided also into riverine and rivers, and then there's a core East? So we know who the major people groups are in Nigeria, and that way each people group choosing one or two persons to really lead and represent them, we put all these people on a table and each people group agree on what they want in this Nigeria, so that we can really stop begging the issue and playing the ostrich and putting our heads in the sand and sounding like helpless people. We are just not able to unite and coerce in our various little regions, not able to really choose some kind of leadership or the other and speak behind that leadership and say that this is what they want. So maybe this is the time to really define the major people groups and let these major people groups now tell us what they want in their various areas. And let us force a sit down round a table and let people stop being afraid of the obvious or having a few people who seem to be in power temporarily control or seem to control Nigeria and frighten everybody else away. And this is my thinking. This is what I want to ask our honorable guest tonight when he comes. Muted. I don't know for how long I've been muted. You muted me? Okay. So, because as far as I'm concerned, I really, really think enough is enough with this, our situation in Nigeria. And we all must just rise and have the courage and the boldness to sit down and discuss this matter. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing to be afraid of. Okay. The man dies only but once. Okay. And the man dies also in the face of tyranny. You're either going to be a slave in your own country, or you're going to speak up and be heard. So I'm waiting for our guest, and I hope that he can set us right in this area. But in the meantime, if there's anybody that has any questions that we want to ask him, you can raise up your hand very quickly, and I can take those questions down so that by the time he comes back, somebody good said to me, that's what the Sovereign National Conference will achieve. I agree, but they've been playing lip service to that Sovereign National Conference, and they've not been able to force them on the table because the various people groups are not united. And when they try to unite, a little
Careful about.
Yes,
that's why Andy is going to work it out. They're going to be on loan to him and nothing else. Otherwise, he'll take your players. You see Coach Boss showing any gratitude?
Players are they
Nigerians?
Please mute your mic.
Yeah, that's so sad.
All right, so if we can we mute the mics? So what I'm saying now is that let us know who the strong people groups are. Who are the strong people groups that now want to sit around the table, or does every single tribe put themselves on the table? I don't think we need every single tribe. Okay, so who are those raising their hands who like to ask a question? Can you tell me who they are? Kate Palm. Okay, Kate Palm, can I hear your question, please? And I'll just note it down for... Okay. All right, Kate, you can unmute yourself and let's hear your question.
Hello.
Hello, Kate.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Very fantastic presentation by Yusuf. I have a comment and a question. I'll start with a question. Maybe the comment will provide some answers. Well, I don't know. But the question, I'd raised it in the chat group at the beginning. With the middle belt, there has always been this nagging issue. I think it's general in the country of indigenization. Whether you're an indigene of the state or whether you're residing in the state in terms of leadership selection, particularly with women. If a woman were to go into politics now and she's a Birom woman married to a Yoruba man or an Igbo man, is she going to contest or married to, where is she going to contest from? So some of these issues, because Yusuf gave some criteria for leadership selection, but we find that that's not ideal. So where do we find the balance in terms of this indigenization versus place of residency? I think for the middle belt, for us to have a strong middle belt, but then to my comment, for us to have a strong middle belt, it's important that we bolster economic activity so that we increase the middle class. When there's a rise of the middle class, then that changes a lot. There's economic empowerment, there's more activity commensurate to the resources that we have in the middle belt. And hopefully that would also give us some negotiation power or give us a louder voice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate. And I can hear you. I think our guest is back. No, he's back. He's back. I think our guest is back and he's going to answer the question from Kate. Thank you very much, Kate. Thank you. I don't know if you are married to a palm or if you were born a palm, but I think that question is speaking to you wanting to run for office in the middle. So I think Yusuf is going to respond to the question.
I am born a palm.
You are born a palm, okay. I wasn't so sure if you were married to a palm or born a palm. So, because I thought if you were married to a palm, Yoruba girl married to a nice, handsome palm, then you want to run for governor of Plateau. That's okay by me. And then to have a strong middle belt, Yusuf, that's what Kate is asking for. And then also, I did say also that how do we get the Middle Belt to coalesce together,
Comment.
elect some kind of leader, let's know who the people groups are and so on and so forth. And whether people of Kwara and Kogi will agree to be Middle Belters, I don't know. But maybe we should now form who really is a Middle Belter, define that Middle Belt, and let them have a stronger position on the table. So Yusuf, can you speak to these issues very quickly? And then I'll take a few more questions and we begin to wind down bit by bit. Please unmute yourself. Thank you.
So first of all, it's not, when we're talking about the geographical composition of the Middle Belt, some of the states are not wholly affiliated or associated with the Middle Belt per se. So you find that we made reference to Southern Yobe, Southern Gombe, Southern Kaduna. And in Kwara, for instance, there are certain tribes in Kwara which would associate with the Middle Belt. But the Yoruba section of Kwara State would prefer to associate with the Southwest. So that's understandable. Kogi State, there are large minority tribes like the Igalas, the Ibiras, and so forth. And so, the Middle Belt itself is not a geographic, it does not have a strictly defined geographical boundary that has been drawn, as it were, as the boundaries of each state. So it's a composition of different ethnic nationalities who are minorities that live within a contiguous land area of Nigeria. So participation in Middle Belt activities, really the characteristic of Middle Belt people is that they are all ethnic minorities within that loose geographical boundary. So to that extent, yeah, you're right to point out that there are those in Kwara, for instance, who prefer to identify with the Southwest. And there are those in some other northern states that would prefer to identify with the Hausa, Fulani, Kanuri neighbors. So that's so much for the composition. Now to Kate's question and comment, the vexed issue of indigenization versus residency has been a major source of tension and sometimes conflict, particularly in Jos. I use Jos as an example because, like I told you, there is a large Hausa population in the heart of Jos that has been there for upwards of 60, 70, some say 100 years. But let us draw a line from about 1914, when 1920, for instance, when mining activity actually took root. The population there has agitated to be given the status of indigenous. But the original inhabitants, the natives of the environs, argue that they are indigenous to these areas. And therefore, there must be a distinction between those who are indigenous and those who settled from other parts of Nigeria into the native lands. So for instance, you have Urobos, Yorubas, Igbos in Jos. You also have Hausas from Kano, Zaria. You have Kanuris from Maiduguri. You have other tribes coming from the north into Plateau. So it has been a vexed question, and I think it is one of the fault lines of Nigeria. The Constitution is not very helpful because although there's a Federal Character Commission and there's a provision that ministers indigenous to each state must be appointed by the president, other than that, definitions have not been given specifically. So the Constitution tells you who a citizen is, but doesn't tell you who an indigene is. And that has been left to the people's devices to fight it out between themselves and to contest for relevance, appointments, and benefits based on what they perceive at their own, at the definitions that suit them best. You know, I think that the arguments around national identity and subordinate identities are more emphasized in an atmosphere of social deprivation, poverty, and lack of access to adequate resources and infrastructure and amenities. The scramble for, or the pressure rather, on appointments by government, by authorities, other authorities, is very high in an environment where opportunities are very low. So for instance, in Lagos, at least when I was growing up there, whether you actually were an indigene of Lagos or not was not an issue. Everybody was going about their daily business trying to make a living. And perhaps there lies the key to the resolution of this contest between national identity and subordinate identities. There is no question that it is relevant, and that even in the Willings Commission report of 1956, the natives of every region were recognized and protected by the Constitution. That was why the human rights provisions relating to non-discrimination on the grounds of sex, religion, and place of origin were inserted, on the one hand. And then on the other hand, the Constitution protected ethnic minorities by inserting the provision of federal character, ultimately. But you know what? You can't legislate some of these human issues. It might be in the law, but when it comes to operation and social relationships between the people, ultimately, that is what dictates what happens in reality between them. Not the letter of the Constitution, not the interpretations of the law, because if you had been in just during the times of the conflicts, nobody was talking about the Constitution. Everybody was talking about their identity, subordinate to the national identity. So this is a question that perhaps, to my mind, will be mitigated by a more prosperous environment and greater relief on the pressures of employment, poverty, and other associated societal ills. As for the discrimination against women that Kate mentioned, it is real. Unfortunately, we still have this patrilineal system where women are considered to be the property of their husbands, with all due respect. And I hope the women will not go up in arms when I said that. But that is the root of this issue, whereby a woman is seen to come from where her husband comes from. She doesn't seem to have her own independent identity. That has not been addressed either in the Constitution or even in terms of legislation. But you might derive some comfort from the knowledge that there are jurists and legal luminaries who are women who are beginning to agitate for legislation and have become active to provide women, in fact, with a dual identity. She can choose to claim where her husband comes from, and she can choose where she originally comes from. So you might be having a double benefit going forward as it is now. if that comes to pass.
And the man should be able to choose where his wife comes from, Jerry. This is what.
No, the women won't allow you to pass that kind of legislation.
They won't allow, but they want to choose where the men come from and have where. You know, my friend, she's from River State. She was made ambassador from Ondo State. Ondo people wanted to go on the streets, but somehow they were calmed down. So we too were going to insist that we can choose where our wives come from. What is good for the gander is good for the goose. Anyway, Yusuf, thanks very much. Let me see if there are any other questions on the platform that you can speak to. Glowera Brima said she's from Kogi State, and she thinks that the Middle Belt might just be the birthplace of our true rainbow coalition for Nigeria. Do you think that forming an independent caucus or focus or interest groups will help to pave the path to reaffirming us or solving our identity issues? I don't know if you want me to repeat that question or if you got it. Do you think that forming an independent caucus or focus interest groups will pave the path to reaffirming us, that is Middle Belters, or solving our identity issues? Yusuf?
So in the first place, there are already several Middle Belt organizations and platforms that are active in promoting Middle Belt interests. And they include the Middle Belt Forum, Middle Belt Dialogue, and the Middle Belt Socio-Political Think Tank. So these fora already exist. The challenge is coalescing them into one coherent body. But the simple answer I have to you about the possibility of having such a caucus, focused caucus, is yes, it is possible. Not easy.
Please, Yusuf, unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
Oh, but I was talking without realizing. You see, technology sometimes can be a pain. Can somebody devise a tool that will automatically unmute when you're on Zoom? Maybe that would be a money-making spinner. Anyhow, so can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I'll just quickly recap.
It's frozen again. Okay, so those are the Middle Belts Jugunus freezing him up. Oh my goodness. Ibrahim, I hear you want to say something. So let me call you, please, to step up and unmute yourself and speak.
Thank you, Pastor Itwa. And thanks for the opportunity to be part of this program. I just want to perhaps challenge a popular narrative. I know when Yusuf started, he was speaking about, I think he took his starting point from 1966. In 1966, General Ironsi promulgated Decree number 34, which is popularly known as the Unification Decree. And the reason that he stated for doing so was to discourage tribal loyalties in order to give way to the urgent task of national reconstruction. Now, that is the context in which Nigeria was redefined. So when we talk about the Federal Republic of Nigeria, is that actually true or is it a fiction? Nigeria is currently, it can be argued that we're not federal. Neither are we a republic, because a republic is an entity that's governed by the people. The people have the power exercised through their representatives. It's arguable that we're not really a republic. So maybe the only word that's true in that is that we are Nigeria. And even that now is being tested. what I want to challenge really is that we seem to be retreating to our ethnic or tribal identities. And that is disturbing because the examples that we have across the world of countries that have experienced conflict, there are five major causes of conflict, and identities is a major one. Resources, culture, etc., values. If we don't, there's a tension between national cohesion and establishing or projecting self or ethnic identities. We've got to get that balance right. And that is why when we talk about restructuring, we're talking about creating the conditions under which each federating unit can find full expression and define its own ambitions and achieve its own goals. So it's important that this tension between ethnicity and development and national progress has to be very well calibrated. And that can only be done really by the elite. And that's why when Pastor Ito talked about the role of the elite, I think it's fundamental. And when Yusuf talked about the anti-intellectualism that we experience in Nigeria, that is at the core of the governance challenge that we face. So my caution really is that while we project ideas around the restructuring of the state, which I fully endorse, and in fact, when you talk about police, Yusuf talked about that. You know, a country like the United Kingdom has 48 police forces. The United States of America has 18,000 police forces. In Nigeria, we've got one to superintend over 200 million people. It's absolutely, irregular. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So as we restructure and as we allow identities to be formed, we have to be careful to also be able to project national cohesion. Thank you, Pastor Ito.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. Those points are well noted. We have to be cautious about going back into our various ethnic identities. Restructuring is good. State or local police also very interesting. I didn't know they had up to 48 police forces in the United Kingdom. I knew they had quite a lot in the US, but I didn't even know it was as many as that. And therefore, we should stop begging that question so that we can provide the kind of security that we need. We're still trying to get our speaker, struggling to get back. But as soon as he comes up, we will take him back up. Do we have any other person that has a comment or a question?
I'm back. I'm actually back.
Oh, you are back. You are back from the middle belt. Okay, you're welcome, Yusuf. You're welcome. Okay, while you're away, Ibrahim
Thank you.
made a few comments that were quite interesting. They expressed caution as to us trying to go back into our ethnic basis, but gave a full support for the having local police and all manners of things like that. I don't know if there's anybody else who has any question or comments to make before I begin to ask our guests to take the closing remarks. Anybody else?
Yes, sir, I do, sir.
Yes, I do.
My hand is up.
Is that Ishaya? Or
Yes. Yes, that's right.
So my name is.
Can I go ahead?
Okay,
Oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead, sir.
Go ahead, Ishaya. Let's have the full effect of the palm.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation, Yusuf, who is my elder brother. I want to say, I want to agree with Ibrahim, who is my younger brother, that we are retreating to the romantic past. The Middle Belt never took off. Middle Belt region, even under the charismatic leadership of J.S. Tucker, didn't take off because of the elite. There was so much division, and they were easily polarized by political carrots that were dangled before them. And I think that, unfortunately, would be the fate of most of these groups that are coming up. And it's because there's a fundamental problem with the concept of the middle belt. It's more now of an ideology and less, it's not a geographical reality. And also there is a religious dimension to the issues. Many of the ethnic groups in the middle belt also fall into one or the other of the two religions, Islam or Christianity. So when you talk about the Middle Belt agitation now, it's mostly associated with the Christian ethnic groups, and there is almost a reflex um, rejection of the idea by the Muslim communities, who are also very there are quite a number in the Middle Belt, and so it looks more and more like a Christian agitation, and it had its roots in the missionaries that worked in the minority areas. So I'm sorry, I don't think that it will be possible in the near future to establish a middle belt identity and a structure. And I think that that's not the way to go. The various ethnic groups and views, can be coalesced into whatever groups that they want to fall in, and they can project their own ideas. It's not likely that the Muslim communities in Adamawa State, in Yobe, in Kaduna, in Nasarawa, even in Plateau, when you talk of Kanam and Wasi, they don't want to be identified with the issue of the Middle Belt because they don't see anything common. So I think that we should be looking more for an economic answer to the issues of Nigeria, which have mainly to do with competition for scarce resources and political office. So people regress into some of these base identities. So I think we should move forward. Yes, there is a middle belt region in the middle of the country, but it's neither homogeneous and the communities are not contiguous. And as one famous politician in the North said, he said, there is no middle and there is no belt. So to me, that is the dilemma of the middle belt. And unfortunately, the elite use the middle belt ideology to gain power. And then as soon as they gain power, they cross over and affiliate themselves with the North, especially. And so you find the middle belt agitators of yesterday are today hand in glove with the Northern majority, just so that they can access power. It's a tool to access power and to have a voice on the table. So for me, the various, even the same challenge faces the Southeast. They're not homogeneous. Even the Southwest now is becoming more and more heterogeneous. The voices, you don't have any dominant leader per se. And to me, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Instead of having one powerful person, let us have all the voices and let us have all the diverse opinions and positions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ishaya. Thank you. And so that I don't get in between, I'll turn it over to your elder brother, Yusuf. Maybe you are taking it out on him for as the younger brother. So let him tackle you. Okay, Yusuf, can you speak to what Ishaya has said? Ishaya, please mute yourself. And Emmanuel, Ishaya, what did you do to your brother? You froze him up again, Kai. Oh dear, you've frozen my guy. You've frozen my guy. You are going to mount for
Can you
freezing.
hear me now?
Okay, we can hear you. Unfreeze yourself.
I'm using
All right, go ahead, Yusuf. Can you hear me? Okay, I think he's going to come back and reconnect. Okay, okay, he's trying to use another media. All right.
Hello.
Yeah. Who is this?
Sir, my name is Emmanuel Dangana, sir.
Okay, Manuel, you want to ask a question very quickly while we wait for our speaker?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
So my question is this: I'm also from the Middle Belt, and as fate will have it, I know the speaker. And my question is that, in view of the fact that we have a lopsided National Assembly, and the fact that we need certain constitutional amendments that would where it needs to go, what's the most practical way to achieve this?
Are you in the car? Can you wind up your glass or something?
No, sir, I'm sorry, sir. I'm in a place where it's quite airy. So it's quite airy. Sorry, sir.
Okay, no problem. Ask your question.
Yes, sir. My question is that we know that we have a constitutional challenge, and that constitutional challenge flowing from the historical perspective that the speaker has spoken about. How do you now restructure, to sort out some of these problems that he's talking about? Because when you look at the National Assembly, you need 2/3 to be able to make any meaningful amendment. How do you practically solve this problem? For me, that's just the challenge. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. We will note that question and we will
I'm
ask.
back.
Okay, he's back. I don't know if you heard what Emmanuel Dangana said. He says, how do we restructure what method do we use to restructure, bearing in mind that we have a lopsided National Assembly? And I'm sure you heard most of the questions that Ishaya asked. So I'd like you to please quickly speak to those things as we begin to round up.
Okay, so just quickly on the issue of the homogeneity of the Middle Belt and the possibility of having a meaningful political coalition. To my mind, it's not as difficult as it sounds, because in my experience, there's nothing that brings people more together than their political interests. And usually, this is spearheaded by their political leaders. So despite the inherent divisions within the region, it is not unsurmountable if it is brought before, if it is forged by a common consensus of leaders.
One day we'll get it right and we'll really forge an IT and technology consensus. Okay, those questions are well noted, and we'll just begin to round up. I'll take one more question.
Can I ask a quick question then?
Okay, Benjamin, I've been waiting for you.
Thank you. Well, so first I just want to say welcome to.
Yeah, can I just say something? Just a comment.
Wait a second. Benjamin has the floor. When is then I'll take your. That's Infinix Hot 6. So let me give Benjamin the floor for 2 minutes, and then you can say your own, and then we will round up. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just keep it brief. So just wanted to say well done to the speaker, who happens to be my dad as well, for the brilliant analysis. And my first question is, does he have any suggestions with regards to how how these ideas and analyses of the Middle Belt and Nigeria as a whole can be made more accessible to the masses? Because you find, very often that a lot of ideas and, things that are considered intellectual when it comes to analysis, et cetera, are not properly understood by most people. And very often you find that it's a function of education. And they seem quite abstract and distant in other cases. So that's one. And then two, how would we go about establishing a system that encourages unity in line with a common vision, like a common Nigerian or middle belt vision, and discourages division along tribal lines and weakens the grip of identity politics? So those are my questions.
Thank you very much. I'm almost your dad, but I'm not yet your dad, so I'll wait for him to come and answer these tough questions, okay? That's the cost of paying expensive school fees for children. So your dad will take up your questions. Me, I'm going to just be an innocent bystander. Okay, Mr. Infinix, let me take your question, and hopefully by that time, Yusuf will be back on and we will conclude.
I've had my hands up for quite a while now. It's not a question. I'm just adding. Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Afi.
Good evening, sir. It was just a couple of things, and it has to do with when
Thank you very much.
the speaker.
Infinix, please, you have to wait. We were looking for you. You are hiding. Afi is speaking now. When she finishes, please be on standby. I'll take you, and then we will close. Afi, please go ahead.
Yeah. So he spoke about selection of leaders, which was a very good, and in terms of identifying, pillars that we would use to select our leaders. And I think this session was really very good because there's a lot of history there, which I don't know some of them. And for me,
because they can't see your face. That's why they say you're hiding. What is that watching?
Afi, please unmute and let's hear you. Thank you.
So my comment here really has to do with, I think we do need to educate people, just like Benjamin said, a lot in terms of history, because it appears that a lot of us, well, not us basically, but there's a lot of history that the millennials don't know about. And if you see, if I use the, and I said the millennials because they are like the force now that within the society we're having. And that's why the End SARS protest was so successful. They're not bothered about these things we're talking about in terms of, I don't think they see it. They just don't see it. So that's a force that is almost a common ground in trying to, they have a unity, a force for us to probably leverage on. But what they lack is history. And a lot of us also lack that history as well. So in terms of how this kind of information can probably go out to the wider, I don't know, wider public maybe, or get more, talk more about the political history of this nation and see, so that we don't make the same repeated patterns. I don't know if you've seen the recent viral message that was going on, just talking about our incumbent president anyway, but it was like some historical factors that were there out in the open. So for me, I think the way forward now is understanding that history will play a lot. If we are trying to redefine or rebrand Nigeria going forward, the history about our political crisis or our political nation or political parties would play a lot in helping us determine our selection of leaders going forward. That's my 2 cents, basically.
Thank you very much, Afi. The way you sound that you're ready to go and bring Nigeria together. I think that's a very interesting question or comment. And this history of Nigeria, we have to deal with it. I don't know whether it's better to leave the people in their innocence so that they can forge a common future, or whether to reintroduce the history and see where the fault lines are. But we will look at that, and I'll ask Yusuf to speak to it. And then the issue of selecting leaders, you are spot on that. And we will also tackle that also. I didn't see the comment on the president, so if you can send it to me, I'll be happy to look at it and learn from his antecedents or the history of his antecedents and see how relevant it is to where we're going forward right now. So, Mr. Infinix, I don't know your real name. If you are there, can you quickly ask your question, and then I really will need to close this session. Who is Mr. Infinix? Is disappeared again? Where is he? Mr. Infinix.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes. No, I'm here. My name is Sam. My name is Sam. Yeah, as a matter of fact,
your name is
can
what?
hear you, sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. Your name is what? You are breaking.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes. My name is Samuel Dan Auta. My name is Samuel Dan Auta, and I'm from Jos Plateau State. Samuel Dan Auta.
All right,
Samuel Auta. I'm
okay.
from. Okay, hear me.
Okay.
Hello.
Go ahead, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
No.
There's no there. Go ahead. We can hear you. I think your connection is
okay. Thank you very much. I want to say a big word to. I want to say a big welcome to the speaker who happens to be. I want to say a big welcome to the speaker who happens to be a mentor to me and my guy. Can you hear me? Okay, so I just want to make a few comments. Queuing in from Ishaya Pam. The middle belt has gone beyond the ethnic perspective to religious perspective. And then this will lead me to say that the complexity of the middle belt movement, or what we call the middle belt people, has a dual nature. So you may want to say it has two elements that defines what the constitution or what constitutes the middle belt. The first part is that there is an ideological middle belt, but geographically not in the geography of the popular middle belt, as we have seen in the maps earlier on the presentation. Then you have the geographical middle belt, which is captured within the geography of what we call the North Central, what we popularly know as the middle belt. Now, coming back to the ideological middle belt, you have, of course, from the implication of ideology, you have people from Katsina. You have people, of course, from the southern Borno, the southern Adamawa, the southern northeast, completely, who share the beliefs, share the values of the middle belt geographical people. That you find them in the northwest and even in the north, in the southeast. What brings about, or what constitutes ideological middle belt, I believe very strongly, is the ideology. People who feel marginalized, disenfranchised from their from rights to citizenship to their natural resources. Now, the reason why I'm saying this, of course, is because the 21st century right now, and from what Ishaya said, if we want to limit the middle belt to an ethnic group of people, then we will be missing a lot from what the ideological middle belt rightly, constitute. And this makes it very difficult for us to want to put a group of people in a box who share a certain belief, certain values, to want to solve a national problem. Now, this will just lead me to say that we have been saying for many years that the problem of Nigeria is leadership, and the speaker laid down some criteria, in selecting, our leaders. I think what we need to do to heal this nation, to transform this nation, is to begin to ask ourselves, how we rebuild leadership? How do we select leadership? How do we down? I have actually and truly lost in modern elites, the current elites who are occupying the power. I think my perspective that we will listen. Try younger generation leaders, and all of them the responsible generation. But these are the people that if we try this, if we find a way to connect, like Kate said, or someone that said, the millennials, if we can find a way to transfer the right knowledge,
You've gone off again, but I know what you are saying. How do we select leaders? How do we identify the millennials? How do we get them on board? And how do we chart a new course? Yusuf, I think you are back on, and I'm just going to take your final comments. I think you had some of the questions that people asked. I won't bother to repeat them. Just answer the ones that you can remember, because we're truly out of time. And let me thank you very much for being here today. Floriat Collegium, you've given us a very, very brilliant expose as to what's really going on in the Middle Belt. I'm sure a lot of people, even on the platform, are not too aware of even the Middle Belt. So that's in itself is a very, very good thing for us. Next week, we'll be back at 5 o'clock. A lot of people keep wondering if we're going to have a session week after week. I want to assure you that as Jesus lives, before he comes back, we'll try our best to be here every Thursday at 5 o'clock. Towards the end of the year, we usually take a 2 or 3 week break just so that we can refresh and rethink. But we definitely will be here next week at 5 o'clock. And it's the same Zoom handle all the time. Anybody who has any suggestions in the interview, let us know. We really want to make something and make a difference in our country. So Yusuf, over to you. Let me have you conclude. And then my usual parting question is this. If you are president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, what would you do to transform our nation? Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much, Pastor Etwa. Just quickly address the issue of the viability of the Middle Belt as a political force. And my answer to that is yes. In spite of the heterogeneous nature of the region, it is more an idea than a mere ethnic identity as it is now. I believe it is also a political necessity for Nigeria, given the contestations for power between the North and the South. The country's political experiment is ripe for a third factor. That is the kind of factor the Middle Belt can bring into the dialogue, and probably a dimension that would mitigate the contest for power between the two regions on a regular basis. How that will be done, the mechanics of how that will be done, will lie with the leadership of the Middle Belt, both young and old. Unfortunately, over time, it has been allowed to, the idea of the Middle Belt has gone into some kind of limbo, because the different leaders of the different groups have virtually gone their own way, seeking their own political interest. Where there's a coalition and a coalescing of these interests by determined leaders, I believe that the Middle Belt experiment is not only going to be a reality, but a potent force in the political landscape of Nigeria. If I was president of Nigeria, a job that I really was very reluctant to engage in, I would focus immediately on the need for unity. It is high time that the presidency, and the president particularly, takes a determined step to bring Nigerians to the table, to listen to what the voices have to say, to take into consideration the current position and the state of the nation, and to listen to divergent voices of reason who have brilliant suggestions to bring to the table to facilitate policy formulation and implementation. The second thing I would do would be to gather those reports that have been gathering dust on the shelves and to subject them to intellectual rigor for the purpose of sending those aspects of them that are relevant to the National Assembly
for necessary legislation, and therefore to work with the elements in the National Assembly to make legislation that will transform Nigeria into the kind of society we want to see it become. Those are the initial steps I would take, and there will be many more, but by then my tenure would have expired.
We want Yusuf. We want Yusuf. We want Yusuf. We want Katabu Ziboza. Thank you so much, my brother. It's been a joy and a pleasure having you. I want to thank all the PAMs that came to support their brother and to cheer him on. Thank you for being there. Don't let this be your last time on the platform. We're here every Thursday. I think I shared a platform with one of you recently on another program or the other from the UK. One of you is in the UK, and we're on the same platform talking about something to do with gender, I think it was, or something like that. It's good to see you guys. Your brother and I were very, very good friends and brothers from King's College, where he was a stinking fag.
So were you.
Our troublesome friend, Lamido Sanusi, very troublesome friend in those days. And it was good to see both of them in my house recently when my wife passed. Yusuf, I really appreciate that. Thank you for coming with Lamido on that visit. And thank you for us reconnecting. I think we're going to, by God's grace, do great things together for Nigeria. Lamido from the north, you from the so-called Middle Belt, and me from the so-called south, southeast, west combined. And by God's grace, Nigeria will be better for. I mean, when we were in King's College, we didn't even know where we were from. We were just boys playing together, playing soccer, committing little crimes like buying bread across the wall. Benjamin, your father used to break bounds. Don't think that don't think that he was an innocent. No, he was naughty, and I will stop there. He used to jump here and there from time to time. But thank you very much for being here. Thank everyone for being here. Good. It's always great to see you. Thank you for your participation and your support, and so on and so forth. Ime, now we had the session you're asking me. Here we are. I hope you enjoyed it. Ibrahim, Yusuf, everybody, Ishaya, good to see you all. Kate, thank you for that question. I want you to run for office, and you can.
Sir.
Thank you.
Hey, Yusuf, very good to see you. Yeah,
okay.
It's good to see the palms.
Yeah.
This should be Palms Forum.
We'll leave it open for comment.
This should be Palms Forum today.
I'm going to sign off here. God bless you all. Have a good evening.
All right.
Bye.
Okay.
Brian Palm.
Bye, everyone.
You can hear me.
See you.
Brian Palm, this is Sonia.
Yeah, bye everyone.
That was beautiful. It was brilliant.
Sonia speaking.
Thank you.
I want to ask the Palm. Yes, today to Joss.
Today happens to be Palm's family.
Let's connect, Sonny.
Is it still safe coming to Joss?
Hey, hi,
We
bro.
we support our own.
Good to see you.
Yeah, we should continue.
Is Joss still safe to come over, Palm?
Joss is very safe.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no problem. You should come for a break.
It's just too bad that they have destroyed it just for us.
Yeah.
No,
I don't know. Maybe I could have detail. I could come over because I'm afraid of coming to those places now. I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, what you hear about is
I'm
just
in Lagos Bridge.
Well, Lagos
Just
is I
safer
think
than
more
Lagos.
yeah, definitely.
all right, guys. Thank you very much.
All right.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Okay.
Thank you for staying
So,
there.
bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for.
Hey, bye.
Let me say hi to the entire Palms clan or the Palms kingdom.
All right. God bless you all.
God bless you.
That's Generation Next.
Yeah, Generation Benjamin Palm,
We can't wait.
Ibrahim Palm,
God bless you.
Yusuf Palm. I want to come to Jos to see how Jos is now.
You are welcome.
You're welcome.
It's been almost about 20, 30 years I've not been to Jos.
Yeah, welcome.
You
God
come.
bless you. We have to sign off now. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you.
It's nice seeing you guys.
Bless you
Bye,
too.
Pastor Itwa. Thanks a lot.
All right. Okay. Bye.
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 All right.
Glorious.
Bye.